what on earth are we supposed to do with Texas? You and I and Trey, as soon as he joins back, are all of the belief that Texas absolutely got the short end of the stick here in the rankings. There is no way that they should be behind Ohio State, even if they do ultimately leapfrog the Buckeyes. It just makes no sense for the Longhorns to be at 7 where they currently reside. They take on the 18th ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys on Saturday. Texas is a 15-point favorite. This is a Saturday morning game in Jerry World. You can watch it on ABC. Main question that I have for you, Garrett: does Texas need style points this weekend, or is simply winning and hoping for a loss ahead of them? And it could literally be as simple as Florida State losing, for instance. Is that enough to get them in, or are we saying that they're just second in line behind the Buckeyes?
Well, if you're asking me to rank my top 4, just the best teams that I think exist right now, I would tell you right now it's gonna be Michigan, Georgia, Oregon, Texas. Those are my top 4. I think Texas is solidly the 4th best team. I think that's how the ranking should be. I don't know what the committee thinks. I have no idea what they're sitting back there thinking. Now, style points, from my perspective, they don't have much else to prove. They've won. You give teams credit for winning. And though they haven't been convincing in all of their games down the stretch, they sure as heck beat the crap out of Texas Tech, and
Yep.
they look pretty dang good doing it. And Ames gives them problems. To win by 10, I think is good enough. It wasn't necessarily convincing. I wouldn't say it's a stellar effort, but it was good enough. There's some close games down the stretch, and Quinn was hurt and everything else. So you take all of it into account. I think Texas has played some pretty dang good football down the stretch. Um, that being said, the committee probably will put them in a position where, yeah, they got to convince us. If they beat Oklahoma State by 4 or 5, I think you really got to start to ask the question, like, oh, are they in trouble of getting left out for Ohio State? Because I think this is the committee's way of saying, we're going to make Texas prove it against Oklahoma State, right? If they only win by a couple, then they'll let Ohio State slide up if that's the case. If they win by a bunch, then you can say, oh yeah, well, conference champions, so we were going to do that anyways. So the committee kind of gets to have their cake and eat it too. I think the Longhorns are the 4th best team in the country right now, and they don't need style points in my book. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, the reality is they probably need to win this one and cover to get it done.
I agree. I think they're in an awkward position. Again, I don't think that they should be left out in the case of a Florida State loss. We'll talk about the Knowles coming up next. To me, this game comes down to not if Texas wins, but by how many.
Hmm.
Ollie Gordon has been a difference maker. He's probably going to be named the best running back in the country here in a couple of days. I think he
He was
absolutely does.
given the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, which I think is extremely
Yes.
well deserved.
Yes, he was. Had 5 touchdowns in the season finale against BYU.
Pretty good.
Maybe the most electric player in the conference, based off of what we saw from him up in Stillwater this year. But Texas has a very, very good running defense. And listen, if this was in Stillwater, I might be tempted to take the Pokes outright. There's a little bit of magic up there, and they certainly have Texas's number over the last couple of years. But guys, Oklahoma State wins my Jekyll and Hyde team of the year. I mean, they took care of business against the Oklahoma Sooners in the final version of Bedlam, and then they go on the road and get rolled by Central Florida. They struggle against BYU. I just don't know which team is going to show up for Oklahoma State. So I'll take Texas, who is motivated, maybe a little angry as well at where they are in the playoff rankings. I'll take the Texas Longhorns to cover this one.
I'm going to take Oklahoma State. I think too much offense and too not little defense, but we've just seen a lot of lapses in Texas defense, especially when they get up big in games. So, I mean, maybe they put that to rest last week against Texas Tech. I don't know. They won by 50, and that's huge. But even if you dive into the stats of that one, it was a lot of self-inflicted things from Texas Tech. So I think Oklahoma State's going to be a little bit more competent, keep this one close. And weird things always seem to happen in the Big 12 championship game. So we'll just throw in the juju a little bit too.
Well, and the fact that in the last, 10 matchups, I think Oklahoma State's something like 8-2. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of a crazy number. I know Texas is a lot better now than they had been in recent years, but that is kind of a weird thing. Oklahoma State seems to have their number. Also, unlike previous years, not a matchup, that we're, getting, again, we're getting this again for the first time this year, typically the round robin, not in this case. Look, when I went back and forth on this game, I think Texas is a good team. I think that they're going to do what they want to on offense. For me, the question has to do with how much are they going to be on the schedule, or sorry, not on the schedule, but how much are they going to be on the field? How much, when you look at Texas's offense, are they going to actually have in time of possession because of Ollie Gordon, right? Ollie Gordon has been an absolute force, and that Texas defense has been actually pretty dang good at stopping the run. And so, to me, something's got to give. Looking at it for these two teams, Oklahoma State averaging 167 on the ground per game, Texas giving up 85. So this is my something's got to give, right? Either Oklahoma State's going to run the ball, and if they do, I think they keep this one close. I don't really see a way for Oklahoma State to win this game. Obviously anything could happen, but I don't really see a path for Oklahoma State to win this one. But to keep it close means that they're running the football effectively and keeping that Texas offense off the field. I think that's probably what happens. And so I'm also going to go Oklahoma State plus the 14.5 in this case. Keep it closer, maybe lose by 10, I don't know, maybe a touchdown, something like that. And just keep it close enough to keep it under that number and never quite let Texas get comfortable here. Even with that said, I still think Texas deserves a spot in the playoff. Even if all they do is win their conference, outside of, everybody being undefeated conference champions ahead of them, I do think Texas deserves to factor into that somehow.
I'm very quickly trying to find my Big 12 predictions for this season. I had Oklahoma State at 8-4. I think they go 9-3, right? Was their final conference
Yeah,
ranking?
9-3.
But getting to where they did, and listen, Ollie Gordon, we talked about him a little bit in the preseason. I put the onus more on the quarterback of Alan Bowman. I'm glad to see that he ended up having a decent season, but there is no doubt that offense rolls through Ollie Gordon. I'm excited to see this. I think it could be a close game. Maybe Texas pulls away late, but there's no doubt they've got their hands full when it comes to the ground game that the Pokes are going to throw.
Gracious, how about